This is Searles Station. It's located about 10 miles south of Ridgecrest, California. Many people, especially those living in or around Ridgecrest, drive past this old train station location but don't even realize what it is or its importance to the area. Now, we can't talk about Searles Station without acknowledging the reason why it's even here. That happens to be the Los Angeles Aqueduct. Intrigued? I was too. So let's see what made Ridgecrest even become a thing and why there's a random train station in the middle of the desert that is still in use today. This is Dusty Desert Trails and our look at Searles Station. Let's talk about origins of the valley first. Joseph R. Walker, an explorer, came through the area in 1834, and there's a pass named after him. He documented trails and geography to include this watering hole with indications of the nearby coastal Indians who lived in the valley. They also had some horse trails that Walker traveled on over the mountains. Later, the Manly Jayhawker parties used this information to find this watering hole that they called Indian Wells. Later, mining operations were started in the Panamint and Cerro Gordo areas, and stagecoach stops were established to include ones that came through the valley. Early settlers of the valley started in 1873 with stage stations and post office like this one's called Coyote Holes, later named Freeman Junction. This one was started by Freeman S. Raymond, a member of the original 49ers. Here is where travelers would either go towards the Pacific coast over Walker Pass or to Los Angeles through Mojave. This location was even robbed in 1874 by the Vasquez gang, who used the nearby rock formation, which is where we get the name Robber's Roost, but that's for another video. Fast forward to the early 1900s, and an aqueduct runs through the Freeman's homestead property. William Holland famously said, "There it is, take it," while opening the sluice gate here in Sylmar, California that started the flow of water on November 5, 1913 as part of a 280-mile aqueduct from Owens Valley to Los Angeles. Pipe emerging halfway down the hillside on the left of the spillway is the original 1913 aqueduct, which is still in use today. On the aqueduct's opening day in 1913, Mulholland stood next to the pipe and addressed the 15,000 citizens saying, "This rude platform is an altar, and on it we are here consecrating this water supply and dedicating this aqueduct to you and your children and your children's children for all time." After this, the valve was allowed the water to spill down this last slope before entering into the water distribution system for the city was turned, and as the water spilled down slope, Mulholland said, "There it is, Mr. Mayor, take it." This aqueduct construction was impossible to complete without infrastructure in place. Plans were developed as early as 1905, and work was being done in the field to prepare for the digging in 1907. Because of the harsh desert environment, wagon trains to deliver supplies through stagecoach stops were not cost-effective, so bids to put in a railroad were checked. There were plans drafted to extend railroads from Owens Lake area to Los Angeles in support of mining operations that were put together around 1887 with two paths in mind. One was to go through Red Rock Canyon, and the other was through the Cooper Basin Passes, which we now know as Searles Station, and to go along the Garlock Road. These plans were used in support of the aqueduct construction with some minor modifications. Garden Station, about a mile northeast of Searles Station, was a stagecoach stop built by John Searles in the late 1800s. It eventually had a post office, a small store, and fruit tree orchard which serviced travelers en route to and from Death Valley. A 12-mile-long water pipeline was established from near El Paso Peak to Garden Station around the late 1904 as previous well attempts struck granite. This is part of the reason this location fascinates me. How did they get their water? Let's check this out. This is Willow Springs. Now, I'm not positive if this is it or not, but based on my research, water was piped from between El Paso Peaks through a few mining claims to Garden Station. Now, looking at Google Earth, this seems to be the best case scenario for a source of water. Keep in mind, as part of the Homestead Act, improvements had to be made and people had to live on the land. But to do that, in the middle of the desert, you need water. So do me a favor, go ahead and make a comment down below and on your thoughts on how Garden Station got its water. Mining operations in Trona, California caused plans to be drawn up and agreements put into place for a rail line between Trona and Searles Station, which would be operated by the Trona Railway Company, with the main line still operated by Southern Pacific. This rail line to Trona was completed in 1914 so cargo such as potash and passengers could begin transport by rail. The post office at Garden Station was closed in 1914. The area was later named Garden City when a bunch of tents were in place for workers building the railroad were located here. Now it is a popular off-road recreation area, although most people don't call it Garden City. The reason for the stagecoach stop, the Searles brothers were moving borax from their claims, where the present-day Trona plant is located, by wagon trains to Mojave, and had a wagon road near the summit where the railroad would eventually travel. A station here would also support other mining operations in the Panamint and Death Valley areas. This is also based on surveys as early as 1882. A contract was awarded to Southern Pacific in April of 1908 to start building from Mojave in support of the Aqueduct construction, and by June of 1908, the rail had reached Cantil, just at the base of Red Rock Canyon. A temporary 3% steep grade called a Shoo-Fly was cut to make it up over the hill near Searles Station, while work on the tunnel, 1.5%, was started to reduce the work getting over the summit. The tunnel was not completed until late 1909. By mid-February of 1909, trains were getting all the way to Little Lake over the Shoo-Fly. The rail line eventually made it all the way to Oweno, just north of Lone Pine, and allowed connections to another line to get all the way to San Francisco for service in October of 1910. This railroad would bring supplies for the aqueduct to include concrete from the Tehachapi plant named Monolith. In addition to supporting aqueduct construction, the railroad serviced various mining operations along its route, some that also produced materials for the aqueduct. Passenger service as well as perishable foods were transported by rail at night through the desert area. Near Pearsonville, logs were loaded onto the rails from Kennedy Meadows. Meanwhile, supplies were still needed along the aqueduct path line. So an 8.35-mile spur line was also placed through Red Rock Canyon to the Dove Springs encampment. This path is now where the highway travels through Red Rock Canyon. This brought supplies to service 4 steam-driven shovels used for aqueduct construction through the area. This rail line got washed away in 1909 by flash flood, which we are all too familiar with nowadays. This line was repaired, and once the aqueduct work was completed in 1910, it was scrapped and removed. The remains of the old camp at Dove Springs, where the rail line that came through Red Rock Canyon ended, is now a popular off-roading location on the weekends. If you look closely, you can still identify the Y and the main rail line paths. Searles Station was Siding 12 when the rail was being built and named after the nearby post office that was designated in honor of Searles brothers. It opened for traffic October 20th, 1908 and became a telegraph hub for the rail system. A formal depot was built and opened in March of 1917 to include living quarters for the agent operating the facility. Other buildings in the area included sheep loading chutes, tool house, bunkhouse, and even an eating facility in the Y section for the workers. The depot was closed and removed in 1960, while the housing and eating facilities were removed by February of 1979. Today, all that is in place is a loading ramp, an old shed, and the railroad crossing where an unfortunate accident occurred on the night of January 25, 1964.
This is Tunnel 29 leading to Searles Station. It's approximately 3,700 feet long, and this is what bypasses the Shoo-Fly, which was obviously a steeper grade. So this is the faster and easier method to get to the Searles Station, which is north. This is what is mostly not well known to people that are living in the area.
The tunnel just south of Searles Station had a fire in it on February 22, 1981. The cause is debatable, but there was a strike going on in Trona at the time. This fire took significant effort to contain, and it damaged the middle third section of the tunnel itself. The old Shoo-Fly was rebuilt on the old rail bed to bypass the damaged tunnel, and service was restored on March 19th over the old path, almost 1 month of service cutoff. The tunnel was brought back into service on July 27, 1982. That's 1 year and 5 months. Meanwhile, during the repairs, application to stop service north of Searles was started before the tunnel repairs were even complete. Over the years, the trucking industry had cut into the profits of the railroad industry, and it was no longer profitable to maintain the lines. Service north of Searles Station ceased operations August of 1982. The rail north of Searles Station was eventually removed by the spring of 1999, leaving this clean gravel rail bed and an occasional bridge. The Navy base was established in 1944 and built 27 miles of tracks starting at an interchange in Inyokern. The Navy saw the isolation and the infrastructure they needed for the war effort at the time. The airfield at China Lake was established with funding from the Manhattan Project. The rail line was used for supplies coming in for the base and materials shipped out as well. After the decision to shut down the rail line north of Searles Station, the Navy put in a siding at Spangler near Trona Pinnacles in 1983 so trucks could move parts and materials from there to the base. Searles Station itself is still used as a transfer point as coal is brought in while materials from Trona is shipped out. Trona Railway moves everything between Searles Station and Trona, while Southern Pacific handles transport on their lines through the tunnel towards Mojave and beyond. If you're lucky, you will see these trains in operation. Otherwise, Searles Station goes mostly unnoticed despite being heavily used by the Trona Mining Corporation. Overall, Searles Station was important to Ridgecrest, mainly because of their aqueduct and later for the commerce to the north. The Navy saw the isolated area with rail access in 1943 and chose this area for a weapons testing facility, which caused Ridgecrest to become what it is today.
Well, thanks for joining us on this episode of Dusty Desert Trails and our look at Searles Station. If you did like this episode, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. And as always, if you had any comments or any other piece of information, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe buttons. And any comments down below, go ahead and share it with everybody else. And as always, happy trails.